What up, chody boats? It's hot as a mofo on July the 16th, 2022. This is New Rigus. So, what have I been doing? Speed it up, bro. I've been programming the J.L. Cooper MSB Rev 2 MIDI controllable patch bay. So, whoopee whoppy whoppy. I reach up here and I push in numbers in base 8, 1 1, 1 2, 1 3, and it sends out patch changes to these things, these modules, and also to the DX7 here, DX7 2 FD, and also to the OB3 squared. So I used to pick the programs for the JL Cooper by choosing presets on the DX7, using that as my master controller, so I had them laid out 1 to 32, so when I hit a button on the DX7, it would throw a patch change out to the MIDI switcher, and that would in turn throw patches out to these. But these contact switches need to be replaced on the DX, which I have, but I haven't gotten around to doing that. So I'm decided to mount the JL Cooper here I'm programming it, new combinations of sounds with this newly unfolded rig. So I have lots of sounds, multis, and the rig, as you can see, has expanded. So this rig originally started, as many of you know, only with the Korg DS8 on top and the Yamaha DX7 2FD on the bottom on their own stands, the two of them, like to emulate the Hammond organ, the two manuals of the Hammond. But somehow these Rhodes pianos just kind of miraculously fall in my lap. And I've learned how to restore them, so I've added them into the stew. So I decided that whenever my original JL Cooper that was mounted in this rack, and I used to gig with this. This was my main rig, and I gigged with it for a lot and made good money. But the JL Cooper got hit by lightning, and then I replaced it with a Digital Music MX8, and it died. And so these things are, I bought them in the 90s. They're pretty old. You end up having to replace the capacitors on the PCP board, which I did with the MX8. And I have one upstairs that's still hanging in there, but I just can't rely on them because they'll fail and I lose all my programming and all these patches that I painstakingly and creatively put in just blink out. So what I did was bought a spare that's sitting over on the bench, the gray one. So as I program my presets into this MS8, I've been dumping them over into the other one as a backup, which puts me slightly ahead of the curve, as opposed to being behind the curve for the last 6-7 years as these things have begun to fail. So anyway, this rig has evolved from only 2 keyboards, DS8 and Yamaha DX7, to adding this Rhodes on the bottom, which is the Mike Wallace Rhodes. It's a 77, and it has been completely restored. Whenever I got it from Mike, the case rotted off, and but as it turns out, the tone generators were in pretty good shape, so I didn't do a full restore by taking off all the tone generator, the tines, and tone bars, and replacing the grommets, and cleaning them and cleaning the screws. I didn't have to do that to this particular piano. I put a bump mod on the action. So I put the little bump mud on to speed the action up, which was phenomenal in improving the performance of this Rhodes. I put a new hammer tip kit on it, and I voiced it and I tuned it. And then eventually, after having success with the Avion Retroflyer preamp, I ended up putting one of those in as well, because this particular Mike Wallace Rhodes had the lowest output of all of them. So it really needed the Retroflyer. And I didn't put it in because I put the Retroflyer in Bubba's Rhodes, which is upstairs. And then I put it in this piano. And then I ended up putting it in my Mark II that already had a Rhodey preamp in it. So that's 3 Retroflyers that I've got. The Rhodes in the den has a Janus preamp, so you don't need it. It sounds phenomenal. And my little 54-key Rhodes that goes through the Hammond organ, I take pride in it, because when I did restore it, a full restore with all of the tone generators, that I removed all the extraneous electronics, and all it has is a 1/4-inch output jack and 1 volume knob, and it sounds phenomenal. You don't need EQ, you don't need preamp if you know how to voice a Rhodes, and I won't go into that area because I had some repercussions of a guy who probably worked for Vintage Vibe that criticized my restoration of Rhodes, because I'm not a tech and I'm not a businessman, and I don't do this for my living. I do this out of sheer love and dedication to the art of music. And these Rhodes pianos I've played all my life, so they're sentimental to me. So I've added the Rose on the bottom, and what I will explain briefly before I really want to play, but this is the first time I've kind of showcased this rig. Today, what I did, which really kind of brought it to closure, was the KX5s, the Yamaha Keytars, the KX5s, these portable keyboards. It's 3 octaves that you can put a strap on and wear it like a keytar. They're wonderful because the action on the KX5 is exactly the same as it is on the DX7. They're leaf springs. And so they've really just proven themselves to be indispensable, because they're smaller. You don't notice the smaller keys, and the action is so. The DX is what I've been playing on as a master controller for the last 30 years, and I like it because one trick is that the DX7 only puts out 100 out of 124 velocity levels, so that when you play sounds, I'm triggering a piano sound in the Korg SG rack, it doesn't put out the full velocity response, 1 to 127. And when you do have a keyboard that does that, your tone module sounds are much brighter. So when you play with the DX7 leaf springs, leaf switches, as a controller, your module sounds are more mellow, which is a very pleasing thing. And the same here. So I think Yamaha may have known kind of what they were doing with that. So, so I have 2. Here's the original. And obviously what has happened is that instead of buying commercial stands, studio systems, workstations, all of this, and as you see the professional keyboard players playing, including Tom Schumann of Spyro Gyra, who rents his stuff now, man, he's playing on a cheesy X stand, and as he's playing the keyboard, it's flopping and bouncing all over the stage. And I'm like, man, he gets away with that. It doesn't bother him. But if you really want to play at the most professional level, the number one requirement is that your keyboards need to be solid and not moving or vibrating. So I ended up building shelves to go, they're mounted to the case of the Rhodes, and so nothing here is moving. It's solid like bookshelves. So that's been a good thing. And then to kind of just expand, I was able to add a shelf here to play bass. And it pivots. I can move the angle of it. And then I added a shelf in the middle, although a full keyboard didn't really seem to fit there, but it's holding my 2 effects pedals, and it would hold one more KX5 tucked back here, which is really great. This is a Tom Schumann thing too, where he plays a lot of mini Moog or leads on the monophonic synthesizer. So having a little 3-octave one here is really an augmentation of this rig. And then the organ module ends up being on this shelf. So if I wanted to pull drawbars and adjust the organ. So this has turned out to be a very nice, ergonomic, naturally unfolding keyboard rig, which is much more evolved than what it started with just these 2 keyboards doing basically. The sounds are as good, but obviously I can do more with this rig. And so just briefly before I play, which will just be the same stuff, the Rhodes, the priority with the Rhodes. So once I got the Avion preamp in it and I got the signal beautifully voiced in the Rhodes and now strong plug-in preamp coming out, the reality is I'm really only using the Avion preamp in mono. It has tip ring sleeve so that you can use its onboard tremolo, which is very nice. But my goal, which I had never done before, was to have a wah-wah pedal on the Rhodes. And so I added that. It's a Morley. It's down here. It's a combination wah and volume pedal. So I keep it pushed down full to keep the volume of the Rhodes full. And if I want to wah-wah, you push the button. The red light comes on. Cool. And you got to practice with that a little bit with your foot to find that filter and how you're going to move your foot to use that wah-wah. There's some skill involved with the wah-wah. Never done that before with the Rhodes, so I got that. And because I'm running it in mono, it has to be in mono to go through the Morley pedal. Instead of using that onboard stereo tremolando, which is great, I said I'm going to take this opportunity to go back and use, the stomp boxes or the effects pedals that the guys really did use in the 80s before digital multi-effects came into fruition. So a rack-mounted, multi-processor like the MIDI Verb 4 or whatever. So they just use stomp boxes. The stomp boxes are notoriously noisy and meant mainly for guitar. So you have to really spend some time getting those to be quiet, which I have done, and I'll give you the key if you want quiet. And I have a little bit of hum here. I got a fan going, but I have mostly quiet in this rig now. And it's also helping that I'm running through Bubba's Crown DC 150 amp. But I have a phase, is it a phase? No, I have a chorus pedal, the CE2 Boss, which is Roland. It's the traditional chorus. It's the Roland chorus. It's a little blue pedal. And it actually is in stereo. So when you bring mono into it, it will convert your Rhodes to stereo. So I'm using that to make the Rhodes stereo, and it goes into the Mackie, and I pan it left and right. So I do have stereo, but it's happening with the Roland CE3. Maybe it's a CE3. It's analog. It's not the digital. And I also have the auto-wah, which was the other pedal that the guys back in the 70s are using on the clavinet, the auto-wah, an envelope filter. And so I have both of those on the Rhodes. So that really is authentic to the lineage of the practice of the Rhodes in the recording studio back in the late 70s. So here's what the Rhodes sounds like. As you hit harder on the Rhodes, you'll hear the auto-wah open and close. And now this is with the chorus off. So that's actually with a wah-wah pedal that I'm using with my foot and the auto-wah going at the same time. Sorry for my big fatness. And then you can turn the chorus back on. Which actually does lower the volume of the Rhodes a little bit, so you have to compensate. So very, very happy with that new permutation of the Rhodes voice, because I've never played any of that funky kind of stuff before on the Rhodes. I always play really beautiful, pretty jazzy kind of smooth things. So that's that. So, you know, I have Hammond organ on the top here. I can control the Leslie speed. I could do it over here too, but I mounted a pedal here on the left, which gets in the way of my bender a little bit, but I don't really use it very often, unless I would happen to play a synth sound or something up on the top. You know, I would use the bender, which is, it's not even a bender, it's a joystick, is really the better controller. So it is in the way a bit, but I have it on Velcro. So if I need to use the bender, see, I can just pop the pedal off. But that's for your Leslie speed, which is important, and also that you have your pedal. So this is very, very much like a real Hammond, albeit with only one manual firing. And so I have, right now, this KX5 is triggering the U220, which is a new addition also. I took the J.L. Cooper out of this rack, and I ended up putting a U220 in there, which this has taken a long time for this to evolve. So that U220, as the battery had to be changed on the DX7, and this was pretty recently that I went over to the man cave and turned on the rig, and the MX8 patch bay was still working, but the DX battery was dead and the programs were gone. So here again, this will be the third time I had to get the battery changed in the DX and program it from scratch again. And then when I brought the MX8 home, the MIDI patch bay, it crapped out. So I just threw it in the trash and got 2 used J.L. Coopers and started over. So that's that. So basically, I got just my good SG rack. So the SG rack, the Korg SG rack, is a black sheep that people didn't really respect. But I'm telling you, for $400, man, piano in a 1-rack space, and you spend a little time tweaking those parameters, it's excellent. It's professional as you could want. I got country piano, jazz piano, pop piano. I have a good Wurlitzer. I have good strings. I have all kinds, and I have them programmed in. But here is the key. Here are all my sounds, and that is some pretty extensive programming for these layers. You got to write it down so in case you lose them again, and lots of programming to get these layers kind of set up. But I'm just happy with what I did today, basically, which is what brought me out here, because it's 100 degrees and it's 100% humidity. It's not quite 100 degrees, but it's hot in the garage. But the KX5s use batteries. So there's a little battery compartment, and you can use 6 AA batteries in a little pack that slides inside, and it has a 9-volt battery connector. Well, batteries are not professional. They're not reliable. And I've spent a good year acquiring the appropriate AC adapters for both effects pedals, the Boss CE3 and the Ottawa, and also 9-volt battery eliminators for the KX5s. And the clue is don't use these cheapy Chinese-made switching power supplies because they're noisy as hell. You want an old school, wound, professional transformer power supply, not switching. And if you find those and you get the appropriate size barrel, which I think is 5.5 millimeters, then your effects will be quiet because it's the power supply that's making them noisy in your audio bus. So I was finally able to find the appropriate AC adapters. And so it ends up being the 9-volt ones. They're Waves, the brand of that adapter. But they're the good ones, and I had to really search for them, and then I had to find the connector to go from 9-volt battery clip to 5.5 plug-in. So I put those in today. So no more batteries for either one of these KX5s, and they got their own hard-wired wire coming out with a plug, and you can use your AC adapter, and they're quiet. So man, no more watching the lights blink as the batteries go dead on these KX5s. They're fixed, they're done, and I have 2 Furman plug lock power strips on the floor that hold your wall warts and lock them into place. So no more spaghetti, no more mess. Everything is clean and it's organized. And this is the first day that it's kind of all come together. So these KX5s have their own, each one has their own dedicated 9-volt plug-in power supply. So I should be in really good shape, knock on wood, that I don't get struck by lightning, or the COVID comes raining down again, or the Army comes in and like they do every single day, and we're just assaulted with radiation and infrasound and G5 microwave. I mean, the electricity in the air in the world today is what's making it 100 degrees. In addition to Fort Junction at Fort Bragg, where they're unloading the 82nd Airborne's gear that came back from Poland via vessel ships, which are unloaded at Sunny Point, which get on the trains, they go to Pembroke, and then they come to Fort Bragg. And then they go to Fort Junction, and now they spend every friggin' day unloading these trains, right? And the heat produced by those locomotives is largely responsible for this horrible heat that we have right now. And that's just the way that it is. Yeehaw. So that would be Caterpillar, who owns Motive Power, who owns Wabtec, who bought it all from GE to build the AC locomotives, which we all know, although they will never resign themselves to say how polluting they are and how much they're producing the majority of the heat in our environment is diesel electric locomotives because of the AC high voltage cabinets and the leaking low frequency AC power when they run in slow mode. The Thrizistor, the IGBT, is producing low frequency alternating current, and it just spills into the environment. It leaks out, and it manifests itself on our power grid and in your house. And what an invasion this is that gives the railroads the right to do this. Oh, well, it's invisible, it's a fantasy, it's fake news. It's not. It's low frequency alternating current that's being radiated, spilled out into your home, onto the power grid that fucks with everything in your life. So when the trains are running, and especially at low speeds, life is shit. Thanks a lot to CSX and the Norfolk Southern, who resisted this transition to begin with when AC came out in the early 90s, and now they've, like the rest of everyone in the world, because of Trump, have decided that they're going to rebuild all of their Dash 9 DC locomotives into these horrible behemoth AC friggin' monsters. So you got a 7 FDL 16-cylinder prime mover, and you got a high voltage cabinet. There isn't anything worse. And you count how many of these newly retrofitted AC super locomotives they've got. This is the problem that we have in the world today. Thank you very much. That's that. So that's a little bit of a tasty preview of all of the other wonderful, delicious sounds that are residing in this system here. And at the punch of a button, say 1, 2 in bass 8. Then I will have another combination of sounds here, of which I am going to reserve for another time. Thank you very much, and peace out.